So hi, Jason.
Hi.
This is an interview for the participants in the Master practitioner in Sweden. So great to have you on, man, here. And my question is really, what is modeling?
Right. Well, first of all, I would say that modeling in terms of language is an unspecified verb. So modeling itself, in terms of the meta model of NLP, it's a big empty box that needs a lot of specification in order to understand. So I would say that that's a great initial question: is what is in this box of this word that's unspecified called modeling?
Yeah. So it's an unspecified verb, really. But if you're doing a modeling project, what do you begin with when you take on a modeling project? Where do you start, so to speak?
Yeah, I think, well, the first thing in my humble experience when starting a modeling project is you have to have some sort of a question or a desire in order to learn how to do something. So there's got to be something where I think a good start for a modeling project is, what do you need to learn next in your life, in your development in a specific field?
Yeah. So what do you need to learn in your development in a specific field?
Yeah.
So
and starting with that, like some sort of a desire and an intention in order to do something that right now you can't do, but it would be important for you to do that in order to achieve one of your desired outcomes.
Yeah. Cool. So when you find such an area where you're really interested in it, and you need to have this skill or this state, what do you do then? When you find it, how narrow must it be? Can it be how broad as ever, or do you have to narrow it down?
Yeah, well, in terms of like NLP and neurosemantic modeling, we can start broad, I guess. I mean, it starts with like, maybe it starts broad, but it's going to get pretty precise as you start to go out and do some research, whether you're researching in books or videos or courses, or you could do research at what's already been modeled in this area, and that's a great place to get a foundational understanding, and also looking for other people that in order to look for people who have that trait or that skill. And really an interesting place that I like to start is looking in yourself at your past and going, where have I been able to do this before, if I have, and doing some self-modeling.
Yeah. So you start off with the subject almost, and then you start to search online at the library or in movies, and also in your own life. Have I been able to do this myself? Okay.
Yeah, and also in other people that who do I know that I would have access to, that I could maybe schedule an interview, kind of like we're doing right now, and say, hey, I have some questions for you about how do you do this? And that will start refining what specifically the subject of a specific NLP or neurosemantics modeling project would be. Would be my sense that the project itself may refine as you start to gather some more information and get some more details. So it might start rough around the edges, but ideally it's going to get pretty precise as to what specifically you're modeling.
So you could say this could be a start of a modeling project, how Jason Schneider models.
Yes, exactly. I think we're going meta now, huh?
Yeah. So I'm reading Michael's book, Thinking as a Modeler, right now, and he's talking about the modeling question. Where does that come in the modeling project, the modeling question, or what is your take on that?
Well, when you say the modeling question, I'm wondering what are you referring to with that?
Well, he was speaking about when he was modeling resilience. What is resilience? Kind of like he started off with that, and he realized that it was too broad, and he had to narrow it down. to how do some people resiliate within a month after a pretty bad, yeah. So I'm not sure, but
I think another story that comes from Michael's modeling as well is when he was modeling wealth creation, and so the original modeling question was something along the lines of how do people become wealthy, and as he, like I was saying, he kind of went into a general research mode. So interviewing wealthy people that he knows, reading the research on people who are wealthy. And through that kind of first stage of going through the material, he had to refine the question, because that wasn't really what he wanted to learn. That's not really what he wanted. He didn't want to model how do people become wealthy. He wanted to learn how do self-made people become wealthy. And so as you start to do this research, you'll start to get a sense of what is it really that I want to know, and what is on the outskirts. Also, to use that same example of Michael and wealth creation, he's looking at people who maybe they're really wealthy, but they're also really unhappy and really sick, right? Because they work, and they don't have this ecology in their life. So maybe the modeling question starts as, how do I become wealthy? Financially wealthy or financially abundant. And then it becomes, well, how does self-made people who didn't start out with wealth, who self-made their wealth, how do they become financially abundant? And then it goes, okay, how do self-made people who are ecological and well-balanced in their life become financially and so the question will refine as you start to learn about the boundaries of what it is that you're looking for and what it is that you're not.
Wow. So it could start broad with a question like what is X, and then it narrows down. You set the boundaries, and you become really specific towards during the modeling project, so to speak.
Yeah, I wouldn't say my sense would be that a starting question would probably, for a modeling project, not be what is X, but a good starting project for a modeling question would be, how do I do X? Or how does someone do X? It's because it's really about about eliciting a process, a how-to process. So how does someone do X? How could I do that? How could I achieve that?
So it could be like, if I have something in my own life that it's kind of like a itching feeling around talking in front of an audience or something like that. And then I see someone who really seemed to enjoy speaking in front of an audience. Could that be a start of a modeling project, so to speak? Yeah,
I'd be like, the modeling question, I guess, would start, an initial starting modeling question would be like, so I feel afraid when it's time. And this is actually something I've done. So when I first started public speaking, I was very nervous, and my whole life I was, in my mid-20s or late 20s, I hadn't had one single reference experience where I could speak in front of a group and not be horrified, terrified, stuttering, shaking. And so my first modeling question is, how could I, when I get on stage, I feel fear, but I see other people, they go up and are actually, I want to go away from the audience. I see people, they want to lean into the audience. So I go, I wonder, how could I do that? How could I, when I get on stage, actually want to go into the audience as opposed to go away from? And so that would be
an interesting thing there as well. So like, I want to lean away from the audience, but now I want to move towards the audience and see the difference between those two states. Or could you
I would say, well, there was a present state where I was, and there was a desired outcome that I wanted to achieve. And so the modeling question really started out as, how can I do this thing that I see other people doing, that I believe is possible, and that some people do that. How could I do that? How do they do that? And that would be a good beginning point.
That question, did you refine that during your work with public speaking, or?
So I don't remember exactly one great thing about modeling is actually documenting your work, which is something that I didn't do too well. But another modeling question, for example, that I'm just in the early stages of right now is how can I get into corporates, or how does trainers or coaches, how do they get into corporate environments?
Okay. So
and then that would be like a starting point, and then it might refine as, okay, I get it, but how does someone, a coach or a trainer, get into corporate who doesn't have any corporate experience? And that might refine it, because if I go out and I spend a lot of time and energy interviewing people who they had tons of corporate experience and they were working in a corporate job, and then they took a training and they started training in corporate, well, that's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That's not going to help me.
So could you say that the background knowledge is important as well when deciding who to model, or you know, who am I modeling that has the skill?
Right. It's going to be, well, that's also going to be part of the modeling process. For example, we did a modeling project on a brief example on one gentleman who was extremely fit, and fit. He was overweight, and he had become extremely fit, and now, you know, you wouldn't even know he was overweight. And one of the modeling questions someone asked is, so how do you choose what you're going to order off of a menu? Which might be like a sub modeling project within the larger modeling project of health and fitness. How does someone go from overweight to fit? That might be a sub part of the model. And so he said, I look at the menu and I don't see food. I see the macros. And for me,
the macros.
That's the modeling question that I asked, because I had no idea what that means. So he's seeing things that I don't even have that concept in my mind. And so the background knowledge is going to be important. To have this kind of understanding in order to, it may or may not be important in order to pull off the skill or to do what they're doing, is basically my point in this one.
Yeah. So it's
so that was the exact question that I asked, driven by a state of curiosity. I'm like, what are macros? This seems like it's important for me to, if I need to look at it, I need to see macros. What's a macro, right?
So it's really about curiosity and having a know-nothing state almost as well.
Yeah, very much so. It's a really, I think, having a know-nothing state, being very curious and genuinely appreciating the person, valuing their skills and their capabilities, and having a genuine desire to learn from this person. How do they do something? And I think it's a great place to come from, particularly when you're interviewing potential models.
Yeah, I could imagine that creates rapport as well. If you're curious about how do you do that so well.
Yeah, very much so. And with that being said, you know, we can also model problems. So you don't only have to model things that you desire, but you could model problems to understand the structure of how do they work as well. And it's the same attitude. Like, wow, you can panic yourself to the point where you go to the emergency room twice per month. That's amazing. I never met anybody who could do that before. How do you do that? That's amazing.
It's skill.
I mean, I can't do that. Even if I wanted to, it would take lots of practice to develop that skill.
And that's pretty much what we do in coaching as well.
Well, yeah, I would say that a large, or not a large part, but at least a decent part of coaching is modeling the client, modeling how do they do their problems, modeling how do they do their resources. So we're going to part of coaching is going to be modeling a unique individual, and that would be your one and only interview subject in this modeling project, and the only relevant one, I guess, if you're going to be in because. I mean, I guess we could pull stuff from other models, but that would bring in some teaching or some mentoring. But if you want to purely coach in the meta coaching sense of the word, that would be your interview subject, your coachee, and you would be modeling from them how do they do their problems, and you'd be modeling from them how do they do their resources so that they can solve their own problems.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if we're having participants on this Meta Master now, and they're going to do a group modeling the next module. What would be your tip or your expertise, recommendation for them when starting off this group modeling project?
It's a very open question. Let me think here. So it's going to be a group modeling an individual. One thing I would say is, in the group, is if you are the type of person who's like, if someone in the group is asking questions and you kind of get a sense of it, then maybe pull back and get other people a chance. And if you're the type of person who's kind of stepping back and watching, maybe try to get a couple of questions in and actually engage a little bit more, so that everybody has an opportunity to develop their skills in asking questions and just being curious. I think one good thing about having a group of people modeling an individual is that each person in the group will have a unique personal history and a unique perception that they're coming from. And so every person will be looking from a different angle, and it will give you potentially a richer model when a lot of people are asking their questions that they have a feel for. So that could be so engage, ask some questions, or give everybody in the group a chance to ask some questions, because each person's questions will maybe shine the light in this model's experience somewhere where you wouldn't have even thought to go.
Yeah. So it's an opportunity for different perspectives in modeling,
right,
a skill. If we come back to the modeling question, because we have been discussing this, what to model and how to narrow it down. Do you have any tips around narrowing the modeling question down?
Well, I would say in terms of a master practitioner training, that my tip would be is start with aim for something smaller. For example, a subjective experience to model will be a lot more rich than modeling something as broad as wealth creation that's a 10-year process.
Yes.
So let's say you want to develop, your main core. You're like, I want to develop wealth, or I want to be a better public speaker, or I want to. So before you start interviewing the model, I might chunk that down as, so what's a particular block that I'm facing in public speaking, or in wealth, or in so not just I want to become wealthy, but maybe how do I choose a product idea, or how do I like who in the group saves money every single time you receive a paycheck, you receive some income, you put it aside and you don't touch it. And that might be a smaller subset of the big one that you could model, and really aiming for the inner game stuff. Trying to pick something where you could model an inner game experience and not necessarily a huge outer game experience. Every big modeling project is going to have lots of sub-models along the way that make it work or not work. And so picking something small and subjective, an experience might be more of an experience to use your NLP and Neuro-Semantics tools.
So to narrow it down to something small in behavior and take it from there, what is the behavior and what is the inner game when I do that behavior?
Like for example, I did a modeling, I begun like a very, very kind of informal modeling project a week or two ago with someone on how they make decisions. How they make decisions.
Okay, yeah.
Because I forget what inspired that, but I was curious about how this person made decisions, particularly how they made the decision to sign up for my program, and so I was modeling how she makes decisions. And one of the things that was fascinating is in that journey of discovering that, I realized that she had actually made the decision 5 years ago. Not necessarily for signing up for my training, but she bought a new car. She was buying a new car, and she had made the decision 5 years ago that she was driving the car and feeling really good. And she said, you know what, when I buy this, when this car breaks down, I'm going to get this car again, the new model of this car. And so then, let's say 5 years later, the decision process was easy, but it was because she had made the decision 5 years ago. And so it was fascinating, because then I refined the modeling question for her, because I'm going, okay, so that's interesting. So that's how you make decisions when you already have a reference experience with something. So let's say, for example, she has a nice dress or a nice shirt that she likes. Maybe she'll go, ooh, I'm gonna shop from this company again. And then a couple of years later, she'll just act upon the decision that she had made in the past. But now I'm getting another modeling question, which is, I wonder, how does she do first-time decisions? Because that strategy wouldn't work if it's the first time ever deciding to buy something, which would be a separate experience for this person. And from that came a couple of other modeling questions. So now I'm going, is it different if it's something really expensive or if it's something really quick and cheap? Is it different? So now from this original modeling, I start to get other questions that I'm curious about. Well, that's a fascinating strategy. Also, another modeling question I have for her is like, so I wonder, how have you ever made a decision before in the past and not kept it? Like later on, you changed your mind.
Yeah.
Or you kept it and you were unhappy that you kept it, and so now you start to refine and you could really get a rich understanding about how one person. But there's lots of little, but you wouldn't find those unless you dove in and started exploring.
Yeah, it's during the process that it becomes richer and more detailed. So is it that this could be a set of different sub modeling that together becomes the decision modeling, or these separate models? Or
I would say that I would have it's really in how you frame it psychologically. It could go either way, but I would think that we would have one, like if I tried that model that she gave me for how she purchased her car and I needed to make a new buying decision, it wouldn't work for me.
No.
Because I'm going, well, I haven't made a decision in the past about this and I don't even know anything about it. So that's a great model, potentially, if you have something and you like it and you want to make a decision, but it wouldn't work in the other scenario. So I would do another modeling project for example, there's a difference between buying something the first time and repeat buying. And so now, and now I'm getting curious. I wonder, how do other people do that? So that's how she does it. What about other people?
Yeah.
And we could start to enrich with other modeling subjects in that realm.
So this brings out a question in me that if you take the NLP Master practitioners that we are having now in our group, this modeling project that they will be doing during the Master Practitioner could be a start of a bigger modeling project if they want.
Very much so. I would think so.
Yeah.
And if you've looked at Michael's modeling journey, I mean, the way that I understand from what I understand from Michael is that each modeling project kind of leads fluidly into the next one, because as soon as you overcome the challenge that you were faced with and you model in order to find the solution or to overcome it, well, here's the next problem. What's the next roadblock and how do we solve that? And so it's kind of like if your life was a series of modeling projects, you wouldn't be able to see past the one that's right in front of you, but as soon as you get past it, you see what the next one is. Yeah. It appears to you.
Wow. It's almost like a personal development road to take a decision. I'm walking on the modeling road now to develop myself.
That's fascinating. How do you do that? Yeah. And how did you make the decision to do that?
Yeah.
So right, yeah.
What NLP started out with modeling. Why do you think modeling is important? What is your take on modeling?
Yeah, I think first of all that modeling is what you've been doing ever since you were born, subconsciously, at least for the first 7 to 10 years. Then after that, you were modeling just a little bit more consciously, perhaps. And so modeling is how we develop as human beings. I think it's extremely valuable to take conscious control over that process so that you're not just absorbing whatever culture you're swimming in, that you can have that kind of meta awareness to choose the models that you want consciously with intention, and intentionally design what's the next modeling project, and then based on my limited understanding of the history of NLP, I wasn't there, but from what I understand, they were modeling, let's say, therapists who could achieve change in people using communication. But I think that ultimately, after they had this model of how to get therapeutic change, that's what NLP was. It was a model for therapeutic change. that what they realized is what they had developed was a model for modeling. And so that's in essence what all of this is. You know, all of what we're doing in NLP and neurosemantics is well, we're either using models or we're modeling. It's really really important skills, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's almost like the core of NLP. It's all about modeling.
Yeah, and the modeling attitude. It's that attitude of modeling. All of NLP comes from modeling, and if you're not modeling, then it becomes kind of stagnant, and it becomes kind of you know, an echo chamber or a hall of mirrors where you're just repeating the modeling of the modeling of the model of someone did a long time ago. Yeah. And so I think the modeling attitude is a powerful place to, you know, filters to look through. Is I wonder how do people do that? How can I do that? How can I achieve my next goal? What do I need to learn? Who can I learn it from? Where can I learn it from? Can I do it myself? And once I can do it myself, how can I teach this, train other people to be able to do what I just did?
Yeah, that's also an important thing to be able to learn the model. So it's not only in my head, but does it work?
Right, and that's a big one too. Is that you know, in terms of NLP and neurosemantics, based on my understanding and my experience, is that it's one thing to build a conceptual model or an intellectual model about how something works. But really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to actualize it. And that's where you'll start to see where the block, like what's stopping me from doing this? So you try on the model, you try to do it. And now the question is what's stopping me? And now you've got a little sub-modeling project. So how that doesn't stop you? How do you do that?
So you kind of like try it on, and then it stops you, and you have to find more information. How do you, when you come to this roadblock or this passage, how do you do then?
Right, exactly.
It's cool. It's really powerful tools we have in neurosemantics and NLP.
Very much so. Very much so.
One question that comes to mind now: what caveats do you have any caveats when modeling?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is to, you know, work on being clean with your questioning. Meaning it's very easy when you're asking questions to lead the witness. So, for example, so, you know, what do you see? And they're like, but actually they're hearing something in their mind. And so if you're kind of asking that sort of a question, you're kind of leading the witness. And so really that know nothing state and being very clean in your questioning, not to lead the witness, but purely to pull out from a place of curiosity, or not to use it as a way to prove what you already know, but use it as a way to learn something new about someone who's unique in front of you, that you couldn't possibly, you know unless you ask this person. So not assuming you know, but being curious.
Yeah. So if you start narrowing down or leading, then you could be modeling with control almost.
Yeah, if you start leading, now you're not actually modeling. What you're doing is you're imposing in the model, as opposed to pulling out a model. You're putting stuff in the system, in which case it won't be super clean.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess.
And asking lots of checking questions. So I'm not understanding. Can you please, like, I'm trying this and I'm not understanding. How do you handle that? And making sure that they're stepped into the experience. Because if they're talking intellectually from the outside, they're just talking. So making sure they're stepped in, asking lots of checking questions, and really slowing down the conversation, I would say, would be a really good tips, when starting out modeling, is to slow down the conversation a lot, because in a 3-second experience, you could unpack that to 300 pages of a book or something. And so the model is going to tend to go fast. And also setting lots of pre-frames up front, I'm going to interrupt you so that I can really make sure that I understand that, you're really good at this. And so you're going to go much quicker than I can handle. So maybe we could slow this down a little bit, and setting lots of pre-frames to prepare the person, build rapport, so that you can slow down the conversation and check a lot.
Yeah. So it's almost like a coaching conversation, to set the frames, to clarity checks, and get a lot of information and strategy, and also the meta questions. I'm wondering, do you have anything that you want to say to the participants that we haven't talked about now? Is it anything that we have missed that is important now?
Well, modeling can be very rich, and so I would say that go in good faith, knowing that you're not going to be perfect the first time through. That there is no right question, not necessarily. There's many ways to go about the same thing. And so go in with a beginner's mind, a learning mind, and focus on maybe one, facet of the experience. Like, we could model the submodalities, the meta-modalities. We can model the meta-state structure. We can model the meta-programs. We can model the strategy. We can model, physiology that you calibrate to, and tone of voice and all that. So there's a lot going on, and just be curious, go in and be persistent. It's kind of like the levels of learning from NLP. You have the unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence. And to go from the, I know I can't do this, to I know I can do this. It's going to take just getting in there and trying it out, and there's no failure, there's only feedback. And as long as you're curious and you're asking questions and you're learning and you're resilient, that you will be an expert modeler. You already are. It's how you became you. And so now we're just going to bring it to consciousness, turn that on so you can do it with more intentionality.
Great explanation, Jason. So I guess thank you for the conversation, and maybe we'll hear from you again during this NLP Master Practitioner. I don't know. Maybe I will ask you more questions around modeling.
I would love that. I'm wishing you guys a wonderful training out there in Sweden, and have a wonderful, enjoyable time modeling.
Tack.
Tack.